Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Fearless Woman, Financial Literacy and Stock Market Participation, featuring Dr. Anna Maria Lusardi, University Professor of Economics and Accountancy at the George Washington University and Academic Director at the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center. Tonight's event will be a fireside chat in which Dr. Lusardi will discuss her most recent research, followed by a Q&A. If you'd like to submit questions, please use the Zoom Q&A function found on the bottom panel of your screen. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Nan J. Morrison, President and CEO of the Council for Economic Education, for her opening remarks. Nan?
Thanks, Thomas. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us this evening. I must admit that I'm beginning to have some small fondness for these virtual events. It allows us to stay in touch with all of you on a more frequent basis and to introduce you to some of the fine minds within our sphere here at CEE, those who inform and guide our work. Our guest this evening is on CEE's board, a great friend and inspiration, a formidable intellect, leader, and researcher, Professor Anna Maria Lusardi. Importantly, she's one of the authors of a new paper titled Fearless Women, Financial Literacy and Stock Market Participation, tonight's topic. While we'll have a conversation with her in just a minute, the meat of her paper is not just about women lagging behind men in terms of financial knowledge, but more critically in terms of confidence. Self-doubt around financial decision-making and the sufficiency or insufficiency of what we know accounts for 1/3 of women's lower participation in the stock market. One of our signature programs here at CEE is called Invest in Girls, where we wrestle with exactly these issues, not just bringing financial knowledge to young women, but mentorship, workplace exposure, and access. So many of our young women and minority kids have no idea of what the stock market is, what kinds of jobs are available in it, the options that it provides across a number of fronts. All of a sudden, they realize that the financial world is not Mordor, full of orcs and monsters. It may not be filled with elves and fairies, but there might be hobbit houses, jobs, and fruitfulness. Their excitement in learning about this from successful women who care about them and guide them, it's joyful. Learning new tools and new languages tied to new possibilities is almost like learning magic for the kids. It is transformative. This is what CE accomplishes, demonstrating to kids that the world is comprehensible, that there's information as well as concrete skill sets for negotiating it and building better lives. We train their teachers, developing solid, accessible, and free resources for them. We create innovative programs to reach overlooked kids and communities. We bring families into the learning experience with their kids, and we advocate with leaders across our nation to get these subjects into our schools. In sum, we are there with new ideas, creating more access and delivering what works. So let's find out more about what works for women and girls, as well as what isn't working for them from our guest, Dr. Lusardi. Let me just expand on her bio for a moment. Anna graduated with a BA in economics from Bocconi University in Milan, and then went on to Princeton, where she earned a PhD and eventually taught. She also taught economics at the University of Chicago, Columbia, and Dartmouth. Since 2014, she has served as a Dennett Trust Distinguished Scholar and Professor of Economics and Accountancy at George Washington University, where she also serves as Director of the Financial Literacy Excellence Center, a joint initiative between Dartmouth College, the Rand Corporation, and the Wharton School. Her awards and accomplishments are many, and we're extremely happy to have her share her insights with us tonight. So Anna, welcome. It's always great to spend time with you. And let's get right to the paper.
Thank you so much, Nan. It's a great pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me to present our new research.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. So let's begin with you telling us why you decided on this topic.
This paper is essentially about gender differences in financial literacy. And I have to say that I have started working on this topic probably 10 years ago. And the reason is, we have looked at many data sets, and it was not until we look internationally that we realized that women always knew less than men. In other words, that there was a gender difference in financial literacy in every data set that we had examined. And that international comparison made us realize that no matter whether we ask these financial literacy questions to Americans, Italians, to Australian, Brazilians, or Swiss women, we always found the same findings, which is that women answer differently than men when it comes to financial literacy. And this is why, after so many years, we decided to try to understand that a lot more and a lot better what is behind this gender difference.
So what do you actually do in the paper?
So we have used this simple financial literacy question we designed several years ago, and they have become known like the big three. And I think the reason why they've been called, we didn't call them actually the big three. What we had in mind when we designed these questions is to measure just the knowledge of the most essential concepts that are at the basis of every financial decisions. And what we realize when we look at these questions, which assess, for example, knowledge of interest compounding, inflation, and risk diversification, and they are designed in a specific way where they are multiple choice questions, so we don't ask people to make very complicated decisions in their head, but we also give an opportunity to say, I do not know, so we don't force people to answer at random. And what we witness is that women disproportionately chose the do not know option. So what we did, we were able to work more recently in our data collection effort with the central bank to ask this question in the traditional way, but then take away the do not know option. And what we discovered was that, first of all, women knew the questions and they were often right, almost as right as men. So in other words, the gender difference shrinks a lot and women know more than they think they know. And in particular, we were able to disentangle how much of that gender gap is knowledge, lack of knowledge, or lack of confidence. In fact, after we ask the question without the do not know option, we ask everybody how confident they are in the answer. And while it looked very simple, it took us 15 pages of math to actually disentangle how much of that gender is knowledge and how much is confidence. And as you have already summarized, we found that at least as much as 1/3 of that gender gap is due to confidence. And then what we do is we link it to behavior. Because of course, financial literacy is important per se, but we wanted to see whether does it matter, and does it also matter how much is knowledge and how much is confidence. We examine in particular investing in the stock market because we think it's the quintessential financial behavior. When people think of finance, they think of the stock market. And I can tell you that my student, for example, when they take my personal finance course, they think it's about investing in the stock market. And so what we found, which I think is the important also other result, is that both knowledge and confidence matter for the participation in the stock market. In other words, women having less confidence and less knowledge are less likely to participate in the stock market. And this is why it is important when we think of financial literacy, or when we think of not leaving people behind when it comes to investing in the long term. It's important to foster, in particular when it comes to women, both knowledge and confidence.
Could you maybe put a little bit more, even more color around the confidence gap? This rings true to me in my experience in business, at business school. Why is it that, do you think, and maybe you've seen it too in your experience, of why women are saying, I don't know, rather than take what's probably a reasonably educated guess?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So first of all, Nan, I see it in my class. I see that my female students are less likely to raise their hands, are less likely to participate in class, in particular when I ask a difficult question. So they are less likely to want it to guess. So this idea that women want to be 100% sure before they say something. And I think that's what the data indicated. Is interesting because one of our questions is very, very simple. It's a 2% calculation. right? And so, and the women get it right, because by the way, it's very simple. And the way we have asked the question is even simpler than doing the calculation. But then when we asked them, how confident are you? They were even hesitant, to say they are confident about a 2% calculation. So I think it does speak of this tendency of women to think that they have to be 100% right. And in other words, in this one as well, in the most difficult questions, which has a lot of jargon, this is where the do not know really shoots up. And so we have actually 1/3 of women answering do not know to a question involving the stock market and risk diversification. And it's true, by the way, in all of the other countries as well. And so in other work, we have actually tried to make question very jargon full, and in particular use really technical terms, and systematically women have answered do not know to that question. Also as evidence that language matter, and when people and women do not understand, they say I do not know, which by the way is a good answer. I'm not arguing it's a bad answer, but there is a limit from being cautious to being fearful. And that's where, I think we want to be careful about.
I'm glad you talk about the fact that language matters so much, because I'm going to put a little plug in here for teaching children and kids when they're young, because a part of it is just becoming familiar with that language and grammar of finance. And I wonder if we could at some point break apart your data set to see, which women maybe had some financial education growing up versus those that didn't, and if that changed any of their answers. So I know researchers are always looking for more research topics. So
actually, it's not only about children. I have to say, because of my research now in my first class of personal finance, I say, you are here to learn the language of finance, but we are going to start in plain English, and we are going to build up that language. And every day you should learn, in every class you should learn new terms. But, we are starting in plain English, and that's important, I think, in particular for my female students.
Right. So we've seen some hesitancy, a little bit of fear, plays into the title of your paper, on the part of women and the actual gender difference. So when you put all these, the knowledge and the behaviors together, what do you think the potential consequences are for women, for their personal lives, for their professional lives?
That's why I think this work is important, because it does speak of the fact that, first of all, financial literacy matters and it has consequences. And that's why we were so keen to, for example, relate it to the behavior of the stock market. And the fact that women, are not participating in the stock market, are not investing, has important consequences for them. For example, for not being able to grow wealth in the long term within a zero interest rate environment. This is particularly important. For not achieving financial security, for not being financially independent. And overall, this could also have implication, for their family. That have implication for, for also being, I would say, financially secure, right? You don't want to also be in trouble. And I also want to mention that financial literacy is linked to other behavior. But, this particular one, and by the way, in this, as in particular during financial crisis, when financial markets are so volatile, or when people enter suddenly into the market, having a confidence about understanding, right, the behavior of the stock market, understanding when it is right and wrong to participate is also important. So I really think it's another enabler for women to be, financially independent and also to be, financially secure.
Yeah, and I think also, you think about allocation of your assets as being such an important part of investing, as you at the top of almost your decision tree. If women are more risk averse and choose a significantly less risky allocation for where they are in their life and what their objectives are, just because they're women, they could actually be losing more upside than the risk would dictate they should. So I've definitely I've seen that in myself sometimes. I have to have a conversation with myself as a rational, as the economists like to say, person. And I've often changed my allocation up on riskier investments. So then you get to the point of, well, how do you get good financial advice? You and I did a panel with our friend Amanda Pullinger from 100 Women in Finance yesterday, and we had quite a lengthy discussion about what should women do? What's a safe source of advice as you're learning to invest in the stock market? Because this is, and I found this a really challenging question, so I'm asking you.
Yes, thank you. It is challenging, and I think a lot of people here misinterpret a little bit what we are trying to say, right? People say, why should we all become financially literate? Which I think they mean, why should we all become financial experts? And I always say financial literacy doesn't mean transforming people. Being financially literate doesn't mean transforming people into Warren Buffett. Right? We just want people to be able to have that basic knowledge so they can navigate the world around them. And I always say we teach literature not because we want people to write War and Peace, but because they can appreciate a good book. And it is the same about financial literacy. You know, can financial advice become a substitute? You know, and I think here I want to be a little bit cautious. So first of all, I think financial advice can be particularly important, in particular if women feel that they are, you know, falling behind or that they are not doing what is best for them. But it is also important that you choose the right advisor, that you are savvy about choosing the advisor, which is also not an easy decision, right? We need to, you know, choose the one which is best for ourselves. And we also need to choose people that respect our preferences. You have said, you know, if you are more risk averse, you know, it's not that, you know, we have to then put you in the market if you, you know, or in the stock market if, you know, this is not going to make you sleep at night, right? So it's particularly important, I think, as we think of financial advisor, in which way they can help women. And you know, but we also have to be sensitive about how can somebody with low financial literacy choose a good advisor. And you know, the other thing I have to say, when you look at the data, we see that it is people with higher financial literacy that use advisors. So, you know, they might be more substitute than complement. The other thing that we also see is that often people who are not financially literate don't follow through the advice of an advisor because they don't fully maybe appreciate or understand or maybe, you know, trust. And so, you know, I feel there is no clear or easy substitute to being financially literate. When I mean, you know, you need to have this basis today so you are better able to navigate the world around you and also choose people who can truly help you in making good financial decisions.
Yeah, it's almost like any other product or service you would buy. You need to do your research. You need to feel comfortable that it's the right fit for you, and you need to trust the person that you're working with, that it's the right thing for you. And I do think it is challenging when you put the confidence cover over all of that. It becomes even more challenging for women to go forward here. Mm-hmm. I love the title of your paper about women being fearless. So how do you think we can make women fearless?
Mm-hmm. It's difficult, but the data provides some suggestions, first of all, and one is the confidence gap. And so I think, you know, we need more and more, and we need programs that are targeted to women. I've always said one size doesn't fit all, and clearly doesn't fit for the women. And that's why it's critically important to have programs that are targeted to the needs, to the knowledge, to the level of confidence of the participants. And we need to be very mindful about that. And I also think we probably in the case of women, and because of that confidence gap, it might be important, for example, to create groups. So to have support groups, to have, for example, mentors and guidance so that women feel more at ease and feel more confident. And also we need more encouragement. For example, this is what I've done in my classroom. I push my student, for example, to be a little bit more fearless, even in answering questions, because I know that this is, they are maybe left behind. And I have to say the reason why we call this paper Fearless Woman, of course, we were inspired by Fearless Girl. And I love that image. I really do. And so maybe I'm the only economist who has spent 15 pages of math to show that a statue makes sense. But I'm happy to have done that. And I really do think that we need a fearless girl in front of every stock exchange around the world, because everywhere women need to invest for their future. And I think, this is a good symbol to give to everybody. And I also want to say we need more program like Invest in Girls. I love the program. I think this work really shows it is important. And, it's okay if we only target girls, because we do want program targeted to them. And we want them to feel very confident and very happy about what they are doing. Another things I want to say, and I've learned a lot from these programs, is that, we also need to be careful about our language and what we say and how we motivate. People are, motivated very differently. And so, this, for example, research has really affected, for example, how I teach my class, but also how I relate to some of my friends, for example, female friends, and so on.
Yeah, so thanks for mentioning Invest in Girls. It's one of our newest programs at CEE. And I love the program because it addresses, as you've pointed out, some of the two premises, right? We help to build knowledge for girls, but we do it in a setting that allows them to build that confidence, that they can talk about the stuff that girls like to talk about when they talk about money. And it's just different than boys. And it's okay that things are different. We see that, in high school, very often girls start holding back in math classes, comp sci classes, and we don't want that to happen in personal finance either. But the other way that we build confidence is by introducing the girls pretty early to role models, women who are in the financial field in some way, so that they can see that this is a possibility for them, that women do this for a living, that it's not out of their reach. So I think it really tries to address the premises of your paper, which is great for us. By the way, somebody mentioned in the chat something that you mentioned, which is women's support groups, investment clubs, and I think those are, as you've pointed out, those can be very valuable. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday as well. But talking to your friends, asking questions, doing the research together can, I think, be very powerful and can also build that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So going from the micro to the macro, what do you think the implications are for the broader economy of this research?
I do think there can be macro implications. One, in particular in the US, where, for example, we have shifted to these defined contribution pensions. So no matter how, women are, if you are working at a job where provided a pension, you are going to be asked, of course, to make an investment. And of course, they can make it for you and you can invest in a target fund. But what we also see, by the way, is that then women, even though they might, choose or stick to what is the default at the firm, then in their own other private investment, they are not as active. So, in a sense, we are required today, right, to be proactive, to invest our retirement saving, for example. And so it's important for women to be able to do so. And that's why, yet again, right, this focus on the stock market. But I also think that if women are not able to grow their wealth, are not able to be financially secure, then the government is going to step in, or taxpayers are potentially stepping in. And this is why I think there is, I would say, a policy case, and in general, I would also say a business case, even for the employer, to provide good and targeted financial educations. Because I think the cost of mistakes are bigger, more painful, Then doing prevention. This is like in health, prevention is better than the cure. And I think these costs, by the way, are not hypothetical. We have documented in many cases what are the costs of financial illiteracy. They are very high. And for somebody who doesn't believe that, I think the financial crises are just a great reminder of what are the costs of financial illiteracy. And so that's why I think there is such a strong case, and now in particular during a pandemic, of making sure that we provide access to all, and that in particular we pay attention to women. Women are half of the population, so this is not a small group, it's a very, very important group. And I want to say more than ever, it's the time to add financial literacy in school. The time is come. I know that only 21 states, a little more, are adding personal finance in school, but I think it's important for everyone. And I think the pandemic has told us that if you don't have it, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, well, thanks for the plug. But after the financial crisis, we saw a fair amount of interest, and then it kind of died out a little bit, and it's picked up recently. But I think with the pandemic coming only 12 years after the financial crisis, people saw those food lines moments after the pandemic struck and realized that, many Americans, that's just not a number. Many Americans really either don't have the wherewithal or the skills, the knowledge to really understand how to create a safe and stable financial life. And so many of these households are headed by women. I just wanted to go back and touch on the workplace topic that you mentioned, because employers do offer now more defined contribution than defined benefit, but it's also important to offer that education and offer it in different ways, right? And maybe it is to newer employees or to women, so that they can answer their questions and feel more confident in asking questions in those smaller group settings. I also think about the number of women that are in the gig economy and the effect that a lack of financial literacy could have on them, because they don't have any safety net from a corporate perspective. And I don't know if you had any thoughts on women in the gig economy and why what the implications are.
I'm so glad you are talking about the gig economy, because that's an example where, now you are self-employed. By the way, you have to provide for your own pension, you have to provide for your own job. And so there are so many more financial decisions to be made. And so even more for them, financial literacy is critically important. Consider also that, many people, as we age and, we want to stay more in the labor market, we have seen a lot of people switching, in their later years, right, from jobs to self-employment. And then here, yet again, I think there is that importance of financial literacy, also because, if you start investing in yourself, that's where these financial skills are very important. And I want to make sure that, we don't mean, and I know that, you are also very sensitive to that. It's not that financial literacy replaces consumer protections, right? Or it's not that financial literacy replaces low wages or replaces, discriminations and so on, or that it can be a response to that. Of course it's not, right? We really need, often we see so many inequities in the economy and in the financial system, and I feel that sometimes, in fact, it is very, very expensive to be poor, because you are going to be paid higher prices and higher interest for services. But I also think that it is so much more than before a skill that is necessary to navigate this economy, and even more certainly during a pandemic, because we need to understand risk. I always love when Dr. Fauci says you need to take a calculated risk, right? And I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, the statistics about that are not very good. But, and the people who are able to take that calculated risk do better, right? And I think are also, they probably are more comfortable in making those decisions. And looking forward, right? This is going to be even more important. You know, the economy is shifting so much that this type of skills, these basic skills, are going to become extremely valuable even more.
Yeah, I like to think of, I appreciate you putting this in the context. And of course, I agree with you. And I always like to think of it as just one of the tools in the toolkit to build financial stability and economic mobility. It's not the only one, but it's got to be there. So I'm going to get ready to turn to some Q&A from the audience. But I wanted to ask you a slightly more personal question. Was, you know, you've done all this great research, you're an important professor, and then you step back and look at it and say, well, like, what have I learned for myself? What am I happy about with this research for you personally?
Yeah, it is. That's what made me passionate about this work. First of all, I have to tell you, I've been teaching for many years macroeconomics and money and banking. But since 2013, I've been teaching personal finance. And from that course, every year, the students write back to me and they tell me about you know, the fact that they are paying off their credit card, the fact that they are saving for their future, the fact that you know, some of the decisions that they have made. And then one student said, you know, your course changed my life. And so, you know, you have, I've never experienced that, unfortunately, with my macro course, but it's, you know, I do feel, in particular in teaching personal finance, that, you know, people after this course are so much better equipped to make the many decisions that are in front of them. And unfortunately, many of them are so consequential today, you know, from student loan to which type of job to have and be able to evaluate the benefit that all of these jobs offers and so on. And so it's so rewarding to see that. I also think that I've become a better teacher because of that. You know, I think being acutely aware of the differences in knowledge, certainly between my female and male students. And I remember I was going in the classroom motivating my personal finance course with, you know, the fact that people were going to be able to make good financial decisions, to invest their wealth and so on. And I don't think it was potentially as motivating for the student. And I, you know, encourage in a different way my female students. And just in my personal life, I also think I've become a better friend. You know, I know how to speak, for example, to some of my female colleagues about some of this topic. And I know that they've been, you know, trying to talk to me about this. And I think I have become better able, in a sense, to provide good advice and use that research, in a sense, to do so. And also that research has allowed me to also make better financial decisions for myself and remind myself that all of these decisions are consequential. So, you know, there is, these benefits are not just hypotheticals. I really witnessed them in my life and they have all paid a good payoff. So very happy to have worked in this field. And, you know, this latest paper, I think, has been, you know, it has been a very long project, in a sense, to find something very simple. And I think that's what are the good projects, when you come up, you know, you are able to explain or found something that is simple, intuitive, and I think makes sense.
Well, that's wonderful. I suspect you were always a great teacher, having known you for 10 years and listened to you talk about how you approach your classroom. So I want to turn to some of the questions now. By the way, some people have asked where they can find the research. So we'll include the link in the note, our follow-up note that we send out, so everybody can go and find the paper. And there really are that many pages of math. You don't have to read all of it, but the summary is excellent. And the questions are in the one of the appendixes. So we have a question that said, values have been cited on several occasions as a strong driver for women in financial decisions. Could shifting from a competitive focus in investing, which she says associated with a stereotypically male approach, to a value-based financial choices, and in education and advising. Could that shift be is that a good shift? Is it a thoughtful one? Could that still be lucrative? Would that help women become more engaged potentially?
Yes, I am going to go a step further. Absolutely. I have to say, I have completely changed my course, first of all. And so I start my class and asking people, what do you think this course is about? And interestingly, there are two responses, more or less, about what this course they expect students to be about. They say that, this is about investing, and it is also about managing debt, which is interesting, right? How much debt, I think, has become an important part of our life. And these are, the front row students, and they tend to be all male. And so I tell them, no, that this course, it's a happiness project. It is about making good decisions so you can achieve your dreams. This is what this course is about. And in the next class, I have the classroom is filled up, and is filled up with female students. So I do think that, this is what the role of finance, right? Finance is about allowing us to achieve certain objectives. So, I think in particular, the way we teach finance courses, or the way we teach a corporate finance course, which is, by the way, very interesting. When it comes to money, everybody thinks that corporate finance is a great course to teach. But when it comes to our own money, right, then everything goes. So it's interesting that we don't teach personal finance as often in university. There are not that many personal finance courses. But, the approach is a little bit less transactional, because it is truly personal. Like, you make decisions that are good for yourself. So I think, shifting the idea that, investing is about, objective for the future, is going to be very important. Value investing, I think, is going to be really appreciated by women. And I think even ESG are going to be very appreciated by women. In general, by young people, they are very concerned about, kind of the environment, making an impact in the economy. And so they really attach value to investment. But believe me, they are right. Investment is for an objective. And by the way, our objective is not to save more and borrow less, right? It's to be financially secure, is to be happy. And we need to incorporate this into the financial decision making.
I love the, if you shape the class, even the title of the class differently and the objectives, that the participant makes changes. Mm-hmm. So somebody, this is kind of a fun question. Somebody's asking, can you share your personal investment experience? When did you start investing? And do you think you're representative of the statistics, or were you just one of the lucky ones that bucket? So I'll let you go first on that.
Yeah, I love this question, and I tell people, people never ask me whether I am rich, right? Or like, we don't ask these questions. And it's interesting. I think it's because, first of all, we don't speak as comfortably about money, or, maybe it's considered a very unpleasant question. And the answer is yes. For Christ's sake, I am a professor in personal finance, right? I mean, if I wasn't, I would be doing something not right. And by the way, the reason I'm rich has really to do with the fact that I have followed these very simple predictions of the personal finance, which is start early and do it regularly, and invest wisely. It's not unfortunately, and I don't want to say it's that trivial, but it's that important. I am an economist also, so it's not that I was coming to personal finance with I had a general knowledge, but I think personal finance is also more specific. So I'm happy to share that, and I'm happy to say that this I think passion originated also from my background. My parents are entrepreneurs, and so I always had been interested in kind of numbers and understanding markets, and understanding how markets work. And I always had the sense that finance is important, that it's not a sideshow, that it really makes a difference. And this is also what allows people to undertake big projects. And that's why it is important. And I think, my capacity to invest well, to take advantage, for example, of the employer provided pensions, starting early, being wise about saving has been critically important. It's hard to do it because I think, all of the advertisement and all of the push are about consuming more than savings. But, knowledge, I can attest in my own experience, really does matter. I think I was not doing it by chance, but I was doing it by purpose and understanding that these are choices that make a difference.
Yep. I think you and I share some common background in that I also learned from my family. My dad and his brothers owned the local radio station, and my parents talked to me about money all the time growing up. So, and I still have memories of sitting on my little pink carpet in my bedroom with my dad explaining the stock tables to me. So, and I was probably 6 or 7 at the time. So getting into those habits early for me, going to the bank with my parents, watching my parents buy a car for cash, like literally counting out the $3,000 or $4,000. Cars were a lot cheaper back then, and we weren't buying expensive cars. Sort of imbued in me these values around understanding money, only buying things when you have enough actual money to do that. Those were all a part of my life growing up. So I think that helped me a lot. I didn't have brothers or sisters, so I was the only one that my parents had to talk to. So they talked to me a lot, but I think it was helpful. And as an adult, I have to say, as a woman, even choosing a financial advisor was very challenging. I interviewed quite a number of advisors, and it was not a good experience. And I'm a person who understands the language, and I still thought I was treated reasonably poorly. And I started bringing a boy with me when I went to some of these meetings because it just seemed an easier thing to do. But I also just wanted to address that so perhaps I am an anomaly because not everybody, whatever family they come from, and that I think doesn't even matter the socioeconomic deal. A lot of people just don't talk about money, no matter what their background is. But I also want to mention that I know there are a lot of people on the call tonight who are leaders in their organizations, and you can also be a role model in your organization. So we put in a lower cost and investment plan, 401k plan. When I arrived at CE, we asked some experts on our board to put together a small, thoughtful set of options so we didn't overwhelm people with the options. And importantly, we made it an opt-out plan, which means that when everybody comes here, they're enrolled just for 1% or so. But they have to make the conscious decision to opt out instead of to join. So we automatically get people in the habit of savings. And that's so important, especially for the folks that come to us for their first or second job, to start saving early. So we have a couple of other interesting questions. So one is that, is having maybe a little less, I'm not quite sure how to word this question, but is having a little bit less confidence and maybe being a little bit more risk averse necessarily a bad thing against the average or against men who might say, oh, I'm going to just go off and I'm going to say it, invest in GameStop, where a woman might be a little bit more thoughtful about that or making some other investment.
I'm very glad this question is, I'm very glad, this is a really great question and a very elaborate one. And by no means, right, this paper is a blanket suggestion, everybody should invest in the stock market, right? Or, no matter your preferences and so on. And it is almost an incitement, get into the market because the market provides higher return, right? The reason it provides higher return is because there is a higher risk. So this is not, in a sense, what we are saying. And, I do believe, by the way, in particular, after having seen this data, that women are going to be excellent, for sure, financial advisor, and they are excellent potentially decision maker. I think being a little bit cautious in finance is great, right? Because it allows you to ask more questions. It allows you not to jump in potentially in riskier project, and it allows you to be more thoughtful. So, I certainly want to appreciate that, and some cautiousness is really good. And that's why what I was saying earlier, they do not know are potentially good way to say, if I'm not sure, why should I act about knowledge that I think is superficial, and why should I invest in a market that I don't even know what it means? I don't even know what it generates. I don't even know what GameStop is, right? So that's not our suggestion, but and we want to respect the risk aversion and the being cautious of women. But at the same time, we do see that this is holding women back. Potentially, from investing in what is today the way to invest in the long term. If you go to any financial planner, they are going to advise, in particular for young people, to invest at least a part of your wealth in the stock market. You have to grow your wealth, in particular in a zero interest rate environment. So putting your money in a checking account today is going to be particularly painful. And so, there clearly, we don't want to advise, women to now start investing in individual stocks or start playing the stock market. The first thing I tell my student, the stock market is not a game, and it's not a game for anyone. But it is important to be aware that there are opportunities to, first of all, diversify your risk. And I think the academic suggestions, by the way, is for everybody to invest part of their wealth in index mutual funds. In other words, well-diversified, extremely low-cost mutual funds, in particular if you are investing in the long term, because we see that the equity premium is there for stocks, and so you can gain a little bit more by investing in, potentially higher risk, but also higher reward. And that's important when you invest for the long term. So of course, being cautious is good, but being fearful is not.
Yep. And, the other thing, I have a friend who's had her career on Wall Street, but she had a background in consumer marketing. And she said, if you're going to buy a stock, you should know the product, right? So, and I remember when we were very early in our career, she would call me from a big box store, or, she was looking at some product someplace. And, it's been great advice, because I will say that I own a small portfolio of individual stocks versus mostly different types of index funds. But the ones that I do own, I really know the company, I know the product, I know the area, because I understand technology. So I have those in my portfolio, and I pay attention to them, and I follow them, and I know what's happening with them, because I care about the technology behind them. I think it's interesting. So I'm very engaged with those investments. So, so somebody's asking, so there are kind of two related questions here. One is, how do we help with, what do we do, right? So how do we help to narrow the confidence gap, get beyond the I don't know response? And then if you're looking for advice and you're a woman, how do you start going about looking for a trusted advisor? You talked a little bit about that earlier with asking friends, but so what's the action plan on narrowing the steps, especially, now we find ourselves in this, yet again, a financial crisis for so many people.
Yeah, and I want to repeat a little bit what I've said before, but just to make it stronger, and also to make it more encompassing, and then try to be more specific, because I totally agree, right? It's important to unveil problems, but it's more important to provide solutions. So first of all, I think we need to start with women as early as possible. Financial habits and probably financial confidence can start very early. In some of the other work, by the way, we found that this gender gap is already present among 15 years old, right? So why is it that, even when you don't make, in a sense, that many financial decisions, right, that there is still this difference in financial literacy and in financial confidence. So, let's start as early as possible. Let's also have it in school, because I think some of this lack of knowledge comes from the fact that left to themselves, right, where do you learn? Right? Often you learn from your family or from your friends, but if your friends don't speak finance to you, and if your family don't teach or speak at the dinner table about financial issues, you are not likely to do it. And perhaps because you are a girl, you are potentially much less likely to be exposed to that. So, I think we need to make that access as accessible as possible, as big as possible. And I think because there is this lack of confidence, everybody is now talking about social media, and let's have TikTok teach personal finance. It's not obvious to me that, women are going to necessarily, learn a lot potentially from these, very short, quick images, in particular if you lack the confidence or that anybody can learn. I haven't taught personal finance with TikTok yet. But so we need, I think, to be mindful of this. And I think for more adult women, I think, first of all, it comes with recognizing that, this is holding them back, and therefore try to find trusted sources. It could be from doing a little bit more of research in finding good advisor, don't go for the first one or settle necessarily for the first one, so compare a set of advisors so you can see, I would say choose in particular certified financial planner, for example, that are on a fee base. So, you don't pay for the product they sell to you, but you just pay a fixed fee. So they can be a little bit more independent. And then use trusted sources, from the CFPB to CE to the National Endowment for Financial Education. There are very trusted sources and non-for-profit organizations whose objective is to provide tools and knowledge for people. And I think these are the good sources to do so. And, and a good book also of personal finance can be helpful. I think, it was Benjamin Franklin who said the investment in knowledge pays a good rate of interest. And I think it's particularly true when it comes to financial knowledge.
For sure. And actually, Beth Kobliner has a great book for millennials, if there are any of you out there. It's really rigorous, but really fun. I have to say, it's a good read. There were a bunch of additional questions around selecting financial advisors, and I'll just share that the final three that I came down, I had a list of questions. I went through them with all of them, and I gauged how well I thought they answered the questions and how well I thought they felt about answering the questions coming from me. I brought somebody with me for a few of them. The final three, it was kind of a toss-up. They were all great, and actually all three of them ended up being ones that were used by other women that I know who were very savvy financially. At the end of the day, that did not surprise me. And one firm was mostly male, but are terrific. I won't say who the three are, but they're terrific, all of them. And I would trust any one of them. So
I would say choose the financial advisor in the same way you choose your doctors.
Yes.
Right? So, like you're probably not going to just the first one. And if they don't listen to you, switch doctor.
Right. So I think that confidence thing comes into play again. And that one probably does cut across socioeconomic lines, because so many people have different feelings about, dealing with people who they see in a powerful position, or who have knowledge of subjects with a lot of strange words in them. So, Anna, I think perhaps you have done some research on this, but I'll bet you know about it. A number of people are asking about the relationship between math and financial literacy, and especially around girls. Is there, any correlation there? Is there a connection? And I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think this is unfortunately one of the reasons, in my view, why people don't appreciate or are afraid of personal finance or financial literacy, because they think it's just math. And then if you're going to take this course, it's going to be a lot of math. So I have to tell you, there is math, but it's simple math. So, and I tell you this because I've been teaching personal finance to football players. And I was able to teach them to use a finance calculator. And believe me, if you do that for a football player, I think you can teach other people as well. Not because they are not talented, by the way, but because that's not what they normally do. Like, they don't go around, with financial calculator. They have other skills. And so, but I think that fear of math has been, I think, very important. Now, what we do see is that people who do well at math, they probably are doing better in financial literacy, because I think, being rigorous and having also that knowledge will make you, for example, appreciate right away formula like the formula of interest compounding. And this is actually a good example, because I have to say, I can explain interest compounding with a picture. I don't necessarily need a lot of math. And, what I teach my student is how to use a finance calculator. And also, it's not just about math. It's also about knowing your rules, knowing the capacity to protect yourself, knowing the law that protects, and so it's not just simply math, so much so that a lot of people have argued, if you teach math, you don't need to teach personal finance. That's actually not the case, because it's even also the same for economics. If you teach economics, it's going to be fine. You don't need personal finance. Personal finance is specialized. It has this, specific knowledge, some of which is also not math related, that are important to know. So, there is math in it, but it's not so difficult that should leave, should prevent so many students from taking it. In fact, I would love to call my course Personal Finance for Poets, because very few humanities students take the course because they think it's very boring, is related to some, economic stuff and, probably a lot of math formulas and so on. And also, remind that, if you teach math only, you're not going to make people financially literate. A reminder to all of you, this is not how it works.
But it can be a lot more fun to teach math if you use great financial literacy lessons to teach things like compound interest, because that's about multiplying, right?
Absolutely, right. So, and by the way, both math teachers and other teachers can actually use personal finance as a great example. By the way, we are trying to, in many countries, have added financial literacy, interestingly, not in math, but in citizen education. Mm-hmm. So, just to tell you that you can teach it even in, social sciences. It doesn't have necessarily to be in math, but I think there are many great examples that can be used beautifully in a math course. So, certainly that can be very helpful.
So now that you've inspired, we're just at the top of the hour. So now that you've inspired a lot of women who may have been maybe a little shaky to go out and be more bold, are there, a couple of resources for them that you recommend, good places to go for thoughtful information that can help them to build their knowledge and thus their confidence?
So, I don't want to be following or suggesting only one particular website, but I think there are very many resources that I think people can use. First of all, I do want to recommend, that we have a FLEC, the Financial Literacy Commission in the US, in charge of a national strategy for financial literacy, that are providing resources. So, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for example, has a lot of resources that are rigorous, that are unbiased, that people can actually read. I also want to say we are providing more and more resources on our website. So it's called www.gflag.org. And one of the things you can do is take the big three questions. Okay, so they are listed there, and so you can take them and see how you are doing. And CE has wonderful resources as well. So these are I want to recommend more rigorous scientifically based resources rather than other one. But don't be shy. I would say, in particular, if you work, to go to your HR office. And ask, for what the employer provides, and often employers have also a variety of resources that they can provide, and potentially a variety of resources they can ask the pension provider of the company to do, and maybe even courses that they can do, and I think that would be helpful. Another resource is the library. And I say this because I don't think we are thinking of the library in this ancient way. You only go to the library if you are going to read War and Peace, but in fact, library, and in fact, the regulator, FINRA Investor Regulation Foundation, has also worked with a lot of libraries where you can get actually good resources as well. So in the same way you are using, in a sense, this information, don't be shy in using this I would say this very rigorous source of information, and use the one that you are in a sense trusting. And I think that's very important. One of the problem I think of the internet is that there is too much information, right? And there is like too many resources and so on. And my recommendation is really use rigorous and unbiased one, because that's particularly important when it comes to your personal finances.
Thanks. And I'm going to echo one of your thoughts about it's important to start young. So if you care about young women, in particular, if you care about any kid learning about personal finance, please bang on the door of your school to get it integrated there. We can help. Bang on the door of your state house or Department of Education, your state, to make sure that requirements get passed. We can help with that too. And if you're concerned about your daughter or your niece or your goddaughter or some other special young woman in your life, or in a school that please be in touch with us about the Invest in Girls program. We look at, somebody actually asked about, but what about the boys? Well, at CE overall, we teach everybody, and so does Anna in her classes.
Absolutely.
But when we look at the financial industry and see that it doesn't look very different from when I graduated from business school or when Anna got her PhD, that needs to change. And part of that is starting to teach all children young about this, but in particular, making sure girls have the knowledge and the confidence to move forward in their lives, to create good lives for themselves, and to have the confidence to explore any career that they would like to. So I want to thank Anna for this incredible research. It's so exciting because it's good for all women. It's great for a CE. And I want to thank her for her time and her generosity with that, because there are so many demands on her time. She's such a preeminent researcher in the field. We're fortunate to have her on the board, and I feel particularly fortunate to have been able to spend a few hours with her over the last 2 days talking about this wonderful research. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to discuss this research with you and this fire chat. And I just want to say I am a member of CE because I am very much passionate about the topic, and because I think of the CEO as a mentor and somebody to look up to.
Thank you.